We good, Sam? Yeah. All right. Well, good afternoon, everybody. I'm very pleased to be here with the Minister of Environment and Protected Areas, Rebecca Schulz. Today is a great day for all Albertans. Alberta became the first jurisdiction in North America to implement an industrial carbon pricing and emissions trading system in 2007. For almost 20 years, our technology innovation and emissions reduction, or TIER system, has shown the world that you can cut emissions and grow the economy at the same time. Today, it stands as the foundation of many of the technologies that are allowing us to make the case for lower emissions, yet high-quality, stable, and reliable energy products. Covering 60% of Alberta's emissions, TIER backs the technologies our industries need to compete globally. Since 2019 alone, we've invested $1.8 billion from the TIER Fund into geothermal, hydrogen, energy storage, methane reduction, and carbon capture projects, reducing about 70 million tons of emissions by 2030 and supporting about 21,000 jobs across the province. To get into a bit more detail, overall emissions have also been reduced by 8.7% since 2015, and oil sands emissions intensity has declined by nearly 30% per barrel since 2012, while production has increased by 96%. Alberta had the greatest absolute reduction in emissions between 2022 and 2023 of any Canadian province or territory, reducing emissions by 2.1 million tons. We also reached our target to reduce our methane emissions by 45% from 2014 levels 3 years early. TIER invests money back into businesses, lowers operating expenses, and keeps Alberta in demand around the world. TIER funds projects from hydrogen to recycling and satellites, allowing Alberta industries to use every feasible way to lower emissions through new technology. Last spring, we engaged hundreds of industry leaders from oil sands and natural gas to manufacturing and biofuels to review the TIER system and discuss how to make it even better. Through online and in-person sessions and written feedback, we listened to what industry needs to succeed. That input shaped the proposed changes that I'm proud to announce today alongside Minister Schulz. This fall, we will introduce updates to the TIER system that will sustain Alberta's leadership in meeting global challenges. What we're announcing will allow businesses to invest directly into technology through TIER, choosing the on-site technologies that will work best for them. We're looking at it a little like a recycling program. The dollars that the companies pay into TIER will be recycled into investments that will reduce their own emissions on their own sites. Something like the Pathways project is an example. Up to 90% of a facility's compliance obligation could be met with this change. This is the best way to ensure that we can support economic growth while also ensuring companies are continuing to lower emissions. We're also allowing smaller facilities that currently participate in the TIER system to leave or opt out of 2025 to reduce costs and red tape. Smaller facilities below the regulatory emissions threshold can face disproportionate compliance costs under TIER, which is mainly designed for large facilities. This change will help smaller industries to save money and redirect resources into emissions reduction investments or other operational improvements for more cost savings. It offers flexibility, especially for small manufacturers and rural operations, which will protect jobs across Alberta. It will incentivize companies to spend money here in Alberta on emissions reductions investments specific to their projects without burdensome regulation or government choosing winners or losers. These amendments will give oil sands companies a new choice. Instead of sending their compliance payments to government, they can choose to direct those dollars into building major emissions reduction projects, again, like the Pathways Alliance Carbon Capture Utilization and Storage Network. This approach allows companies to meet up to 90% of their compliance obligations by investing in projects that can cut emissions at their own facilities rather than waiting for government to redistribute those funds. An updated TIER system will also help our businesses and employers stay competitive on the world stage. All Albertans will benefit from a stronger, more resilient economy that can weather global market swings now and for years to come. I do want to thank the dedicated staff at Environment and Protected Areas who've been working on this for a long time and for helping to turn good ideas like this one into action. And to our private sector partners and stakeholders, thank you for rolling up your sleeves, offering candid feedback and staying focused on solutions. When government and industry work together, everyone wins. I'd now like to turn it over to Minister Schulz to tell us more.
Thank you so much, Premier, and good afternoon, everyone. As Premier mentioned, in 2007, the Alberta government at the time launched North America's first industrial emissions pricing program, known as the TIER system today. The goal at the time was to improve environmental outcomes, invest in the development of new technology, create jobs, diversify and grow our economy, and be able to measure and communicate our exceptional record. Industry has long felt the TIER program has made us a leader. It has helped to show Canada and the rest of the world that you can reduce emissions and footprint without shutting in production or shutting down entire sectors, as many activists wanted. Alberta is unapologetic about our resource development, and we've cemented our reputation as both an energy superpower and a responsible producer of choice. Our industry has proven that a balance between the environment, economic growth, and energy security, reliability, and affordability is not just possible, it's what we do. However, the global economy looks very different today than it did 20 years ago. So we need a system that works for the world that we live in today. We went to industry this spring, as Premier mentioned, to companies on both sides of the system, whether a payer into the TIER system or a beneficiary of carbon credits and markets. Overwhelmingly, we heard a few things. First was support for Alberta managing our own industrial system. We also heard that there's significant confidence in our TIER system as a model moving forward. That said, we also heard about the challenges of changing trade agreements, disruptive tariffs, rising costs. Of course, we heard about the layering of anti-industry federal environmental policies. These are hurting our competitiveness when it comes to attracting investment and producing environmentally responsible energy, and then, of course, delivering it to those who need it here and around the world. But this investment climate has also been a deterrent to investment in new technology and innovation in this space. That's why we are introducing updates to the TIER system this fall, to defend our economy, maintain our environmental leadership, and support our industry's competitiveness. Now, these are practical, pragmatic updates that will respond to our current situation, reduce unnecessary costs, but still maintain our leadership position, which has made us the jurisdiction of choice that countries like Japan and Germany are coming to meet both their energy and environmental goals. Instead of sticking to two compliance options, which is by paying a levy or using credits to offset their emissions, enabling companies to reinvest in their own facilities and choose the on-site technologies that work best for them. This helps with the economics of production, but also emissions reduction. And not just in the oil sands. This will help our conventional industry as well, as they have goals to continue to work on methane emissions reduction, for example. Our move to freeze the TIER price in the spring and now amending the TIER system, these are necessary responses to defend our industry and keep our economy strong. Despite the challenges and headwinds that remain, these changes are about a province that works in step with industry to fuel innovation, attract global investment, and steward our environment for generations to come. Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll now enter the media Q&A portion for the announcement. We'll start off here in the room before making our way to the phones. We'll be taking one question, one follow-up, and a reminder to state your name and outlet before asking your question. Go ahead.
G'day, Emma Graney at the Globe and Mail. I just want to ask, obviously, about today's announcement. Alberta carbon markets have actually fallen 55% year over year. That's a really softened market, and it's according to an S&P Global analysis, actually. It said it might not even balance out by the end of the decade unless you don't make any aggressive regulatory changes. And given the carbon market is actually crucial to pathways going ahead, that's partly the reason that they kind of need to do this thing, it's going to further soften that carbon market. So why make these changes when you're not actually going to be helping pathways at all?
Well, here's what I would say first, is that when we look at carbon markets and carbon credit prices around the world, there is a shift. There has been a softening of price, and I would say, obviously, that predates the changes that we're making today, but it's also because of decisions that we are seeing made around the world to focus on economic competitiveness, which matters, of course, at the same time as the environmental benefits. And so this is a way, these changes are a way for us to still maintain that system. We know it is very important for past investments that have been made under the TIER system as well. But this is a shift that we're seeing globally. We do want to see investments in new technology and innovation. I know that's something that the Premier is quite proud of. It also builds on our reputation as an and as a place of innovators. And so, I would say these changes, allowing companies to invest where the emissions are actually being generated, is going to be a significant win for industry. And again, on the carbon market side, I would say part of that is outside our control as we're seeing the global shift to focus on economics of projects.
Okay, and next question is for the Premier. Obviously, you met with the Prime Minister Mark Carney last week. Did you discuss these changes with him? And I'm curious about how you see this fitting into the whole grand bargain kind of quid pro quo that you've been
Yes, we
on.
let him know that we were moving in this direction. It's a model that is already in operation, as I understand it, in some of the big industrial emitters in Ontario, as well as in Saskatchewan as well. I mean, the companies have to pay the amount anyway, so allowing them to pay it into a fund if they want us to make the decision about how that goes to emissions reduction sites or put it into their own emissions reduction. It's kind of almost like a mandatory spend, similar to what we do with getting them to pay down their liability on oil and gas sites that need to be reclaimed. So I did mention to him that this was coming, that we knew that we needed to find a different way of approaching this issue, and so this won't be a surprise to the federal government on that.
Go ahead.
Edward Jan from City News. Premier, the Insurance Bureau of Canada wants you to scrap the insurance rate cap. They say they're losing money in Alberta. What does your government plan to do about this?
Well, I think most people who are good drivers, who drive the same car, don't have accidents and don't get tickets, don't expect to see double-digit increases in their insurance rates. And so it is still a very generous cap of 7.5%, allowing for the fact that we do have more natural disasters here. We do know that there's an increase in costs associated with repairs for vehicles, but we also want the industry to be fair and reasonable. And so that's one of the things that we're talking about actively, about how we can make sure that we maintain the competitive market in Alberta, and as we move to the new Care First model.
And a public insurance option is something your government has considered. What's the latest on that? And why not move towards the same direction neighboring provinces have done as well, too, in terms of having a public insurance option?
Well, because it would cost, I think, $3 to $4 billion. We'd have to lay off 5,000 to 7,000 private sector workers. We'd have to take 5 years to set up a new system. And if there are shortfalls, it would be paid for by taxpayers. Those are all things I don't love about a public insurance model, and it's why we're trying to do what we can to maintain the private sector operation. I know others have gone in a different direction, but starting a brand new public insurer from scratch has significant startup costs, as well as significant delays in being able to get it implemented. Whereas the Care First model that we're putting in place is a compromise, where we have fewer ranges of options for tort action, but we also have a more generous call your doctor first approach, so that we can support people who have been injured and need income replacement. That can be in place within a couple of short years.
Drew Anderson with the Narwhal. I'm just curious about the investing directly component of this. Mm-hmm. Is there any way to actually ensure that emissions will be reduced with the technologies that they're investing in? How will that be monitored? And are there repercussions if the emissions actually don't go down with those investments?
Well, I can tell you that the Pathways project is the prime example that we're looking at. And what they have put out there an aggressive target to be carbon neutral by 2050. That was their starting point. They have multiple ways they want to get there. One part is this carbon capture pipeline. Another part is adopting interties and potentially hydroelectric power and nuclear power in a future iteration, maybe when the small modular nuclear becomes available. And then that last mile is direct air capture, which the big company that was investing in that has moved back to Alberta, and so they'll be working on direct air capture proposals or new technologies in central Alberta. So I would say that we've already seen that this industry is expert at capturing CO2. We've had CO2 capture technology being used for enhanced oil recovery for decades. We also have seen it work in Saskatchewan, where they have 40 megatons that has been captured and utilized for enhanced oil recovery. We have two major projects here, the Carbon Trunk Line and Shell's Quest project. We're up to 14 megatons that has been sequestered. So it's a matter of building the infrastructure. We know it works. And so, and we also have, I'll turn it over to the minister to talk about the ways in which we monitor to make sure that we're achieving those targets.
That's a great question. And so right now, when it comes to obligations under tier, we already have a team that looks at that and ensures compliance within the current tier system. What this will mean now is that companies will essentially have 8 years of time to make an investment in real critical infrastructure within essentially a list of approved projects that would fall under this program. And so that could be changing out, whether that's storage tanks, pneumatics. A lot of that has already been done in our conventional industry to help with methane emissions reductions. It could be CCS. It could be a variety of technologies to help, I would say, both with companies being efficient and then reducing their environmental footprint. So companies will be able to go back, and the calculation is that they can go back 3 years in terms of their compliance obligations and then take the future 5 years. And so there's an 8-year time frame in which they can take those obligations and make that investment. Now, if those companies do not invest those dollars, that's what then comes to government. And that's how we continue to fund new technology through mechanisms like we already have through Emissions Reduction Alberta, or of course, we make direct investments through government like what we've done with the Natural Gas Innovation Fund and other projects and initiatives like that.
Next question is for the Premier. Premier, on Tuesday, your special advisor, David Yeager, who's also on the board of the AER, and this is a direct quote, so forgive my salty language. He called the current state of oil and gas regulations a giant stinking pile of shit. I'm just curious if you would agree with that assessment and whether you think that what you've announced today will help the situation.
They're two different things. So this addressing emissions reduction is part of what we think is going to be important to support a lower carbon barrels so that we can get new pipelines built and get to new markets. So that's one aspect. The mature asset strategy is dealing with a legacy problem that I first became acquainted with when I was doing landowner property rights advocacy in the 1990s, knowing that we had a number of wells that were suspended, inactive, that just simply were not getting cleaned up and were just getting carried forward over and over again. We found in recent years that there were bad actors who were coming in, buying up assets, going bankrupt, and then turning over the well sites to the Orphan Well Association. That's why the Orphan Well Association has become overwhelmed. And in addition, those bad actors haven't been paying their property taxes and haven't been paying their landowner leases. And so that's what we inherited. And I just watched it get worse and worse for 30 years that I've been watching it, and said enough is enough. We've got to address this issue. We have a go forward problem that we want to make sure every new well that gets drilled has an appropriate dollars set aside so that it can be reclaimed in future. But we've got a legacy problem that's somewhere in the order of $30 to $35 billion. And so we're working with landowner groups, understanding their concerns. We have to get landowner leases paid. We're working with municipalities. We understand their concern. We've got to get municipal taxes paid. But more importantly, we've got to get the bad actors out of the industry. And that is what we're trying to solve. It is a bit of a mess. I'll use less colorful language. It's been a mess for a long time. And we really are asking everybody who's been impacted to just work with us to try to solve it. We think it's really important that we really address this once and for all. We just can't continue to allow some of these abandoned well sites or inactive well sites, some of which haven't been cleaned up since the 50s. We just can't keep allowing that to go passing forward to the next person left playing musical chairs until there's no more chairs standing, because then it falls to the Orphan Well Association, and we don't want that to fall to taxpayers, because right now we have a polluter pay system, and the best way that we can make sure that the polluters pay is to have a viable industry that are taking care of their liabilities as they go. So yes, we know it's created a lot of consternation that we're trying to find, that we're sort of trying to find all the problems, but in finding the problems, we're also going to find the solutions.
Go ahead.
Hi, Premier. Jackie with CTV. Just topic change a little bit. The ATA responded to the labor relations complaint that the province filed. They say it's an attempt to put off and sabotage negotiations and a waste of time in legal maneuver. So one, just wondering how you respond. And then two, what is your perspective on that labor relations complaint, please?
Well, we're asking Jason Schilling to be truthful. That's not too much to ask, and to not put things in communiques to his members and the public that are not truthful. And if he's going to continue being untruthful, we're going to continue to make complaints. The truth of the matter is we understand that frontline teachers have told us from the very early stages of negotiation that they're concerned about class sizes and they're concerned about classroom complexity. And that's why we launched an entire consultation to get the feedback from frontline teachers about the ways in which they want us to deal with that. There's a couple of different solutions. One is we just simply have to build more space. That's why we're building an $8.6 billion investment strategy to build new schools, and we fast-track the construction of schools because we just need more physical space for all of the students that have come into the system. The second stage is giving school boards an allotment of money so that they can either hire teachers or education assistants in order to deal with the issues that in the way that makes the most sense to them. As a specialized $400 million pot, and so it can hire teachers or education assistants to be able to either have smaller class sizes or have more hands on deck in existing classrooms. And then at the table, we also put forward a commitment to hire 1,000 new teachers a year for the next 3 years. These are all issues that the bargaining unit or that the Teachers Association put on the table, and we said yes to. Those are all to address class sizes. So to try to imply somehow that we're not interested or don't have a mandate to address class size issues is simply not true. And so that's what I'm saying. If he's going to say untrue things, we're going to call him out. So he should stop it and get back to the bargaining table so that we can get to an agreement so that we don't have labor disruption on October 6th.
Thank you.
And we're going to take one more from the floor, and then we'll go to the phones for a few questions. Go ahead.
Kobe Telek, Post Media. In regards to the ERA as it exists currently, I guess I'm just sort of curious as to what the future is for the ERA going forward and whether or not there will be any adjustments to how that current operation is funded.
Yeah, ERA has been a great partner, and they have really worked, I would say, over the last couple of years to ensure that they are aligning needs within industry around some of the competitions that they've launched and addressing some of the gaps that we've had when it comes to technology advancement. And so this does not negate the need for them at all. There will still be dollars that we are able to direct them to continue doing the good work that they do. They have been launching challenges to address certain segments of the economy or certain aspects of technology that we would like to spur on. But then they also have a trusted partner program, which has also been able to dedicate funds to de-risking and accelerating new technology. So we continue to look forward to working with them. There are a number of ways which we can fund them. We still do anticipate revenues, albeit there will likely be fewer revenues coming in through that system. But if you would look back on the last number of budget years, there has been quite a large number of dollars in the tier fund that we have had disposal to direct. We think that there is still more than enough funding to support their work, but also really enable industry to make the necessary changes in their own facilities, which I think is going to have even a greater impact when it comes to environmental footprint, but also help address some of the competitiveness issues that they are facing right now.
Yeah. And I'll just add, I think Emissions Reduction Alberta is $50 million a year in their budget. And we've had some great successes in helping to provide some grant support there. ERRA Technologies, which is geothermal, is partially funded out of there. E3 just cut the ribbon on their new commercial scale lithium, brine-hosted lithium project. That also received money from that fund. Carbon engineering, was the one that went to the United States, bought up by Occidental, but is now returning for direct air capture. There really are just success story after success story coming out of that fund. And so we would hope that there'd be room for both, that companies would be able to use their dollars to invest in some of the big scale infrastructure that they need to get some big projects moved ahead, but others who want to reduce emissions a different way pay into the fund. That would also be able to go to continue to support Emissions Reduction Alberta.
In terms of the technology development that is actually funded through the direct fund, will there be any difference in what does or does not qualify? And how do you expect this to change the landscape of the technologies that are being researched in Alberta?
Yeah, I think that ERA has a pretty solid mandate, and they have a very strong board with expertise in business from the investment community, both here and from around the world. And so they have really demonstrated an excellent expertise and capacity to make some of these decisions. especially when it comes to technology that is actually viable and scalable, which I think is key. And so we would imagine that they will continue to do that work. They would be aware that these changes are coming, as it's something we've been asked from industry, especially as they've seen companies around the country looking at an approach like this. But they are a trusted partner. They'll still be able to make these types of investments, and their board has done an excellent job at identifying projects. And I would say even over the last couple of years, kind of scaling to making sure that we are focusing on projects that are economically viable and scalable and help us directly here in Alberta, but also, as Premier mentioned, a company like ERRA. We're now seeing ERRA, they set up their test pilot over in Germany to help them with their energy needs, and then hopefully we can see that when it works for us from an economic perspective, see that technology continue to grow here in Canada as well. And so we're quite proud of the relationship. There will still be dollars to direct their way, and we're very competent in their leadership and their board and the great work that they've been doing.
Thank you. And we're going to head to the phones for a few questions. Operator, could you put through our first caller, please? Operator, could you put through our first caller on the phones, please?
No.
Nope.
Seeing no, we'll come back to the mic here for another question. Try going to the phones next.
That was exciting. I like that. Premier, for you personally, I guess, and when you're sitting down with your cabinet, how do you balance economic activity with environmental impact when it comes to something like this?
Well, I can tell you that we had a great and robust cabinet and caucus discussion when I first came in, when we were developing our emissions reduction and energy development plan, which we released in April of 2023. And it charted a pathway to reach carbon neutrality by 2050 based on what we were already hearing the industry tell us. So the Pathways Project had already put forward a proposal. Several of our large-scale electricity providers had also put a policy forward to get to 2050, and we have a history of being able to support these kinds of projects. And so it does seem to me, if we have a long enough time frame, this is what we've always said, if we have a long enough time frame, we believe that technology will be able to address these problems. The issue that we've had with the federal government is that they want to cut short that very important innovation cycle that you need with arbitrary deadlines of 2030 and 2035. And if you try to put in targets that are too aggressive and too soon to allow that, all you're doing is shutting in production. So we think if we can stretch things out to 2050, provide this kind of recycling program, we think that the companies will have not only the dollars but also the time frame to be able to do both, develop their energy but also reduce emissions.
Thanks. And just a quick one for a colleague of mine. Economists are saying we're at the highest pressure point for recession since COVID.
Yeah.
Is there any concern with you for recession, for inflation, et cetera?
Lots of concern. I mean, you saw the budget. My finance minister is notoriously conservative, and his conservatism has been borne out, I think, in the first 3 months of this year. When you look at how oil and gas prices are low, when you look at the uncertainty around tariffs, when you look at the fact that people are sitting on their dollars when it comes to investment. I think there was a recent story about that. And that if that happens, it means that you don't have the jobs and you don't have the personal income tax revenue. Companies aren't making money, then you don't have the corporate income tax revenue. If you've got the tariff threat, and fortunately in Alberta, only 3% of our goods are subject to tariffs because the rest are CUSMA compliant. So we are the least impacted compared to the other provinces, but we're still seeing it. With the first quarter update, it looks even worse, unfortunately, than what we had projected when the budget first came out. It's also why we accelerated our tax cut. We knew that people were hurting, and they needed to get more dollars in their pockets to be able to assist them through this period of uncertainty. But yes, we take that seriously.
Thanks, Tim. We'll see if the phones are working now. Operator, are you able to put through our first caller on the phones?
No one's there?
Yeah, there are people there. But seeing those tech difficulties, we'll just come back here to the mic in the room.
Great. Arzuma with Radio Canada. Can you clarify how tier compliance credits and emission benchmark will be affected by today's announcement?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So currently, or as it stands today, those larger emitters have two options when it comes to meeting their obligations under tier. One is that they can pay the levy, and those are the dollars that then come into the tier fund and are distributed out through ERRA or through direct government programs, like where we've made investments in the Natural Gas Innovation Fund, for example, or other programs to support methane emissions reductions or what have you. Alternatively, they are able to cash in credits on the credit market. Now what we're adding is a third option. Direct recycling, mandatory minimum spend, a lot of ways to describe what we're enabling industry to do, but it is essentially to reinvest those obligations into their own current facilities to make upgrades that will reduce emissions and footprint, but help address some of the competitiveness concerns that they're seeing. You know, one of the things we heard, and I would say this was under the previous federal government, we had made very clear that while there was announcements being made into one-off investments, especially around CCUS, the challenge is when you have such an uncompetitive and uncertain regulatory environment with the layering of federal policies and programs, and you've heard the Premier advocate for changes on this front, whether it's tanker bans, the Impact Assessment Act, we have an oil and gas production cap, net zero electricity regulations, uncertainty around methane, an increasing carbon price to 170. That would completely shut in production in Canada and make us very uncompetitive when it comes to other energy producing nations around the world. When we see all of that policy layered on even investments in new technology and emissions reduction innovation, it wasn't happening. And so that's the challenge. What this change allows us to do is enable our industry to make changes where they're going to have the biggest impact, keep growing jobs, keep working towards our goal of doubling energy production, meeting global demand for safe, affordable, reliable energy. I would argue that's also become an issue of national security and energy security for Canada and other countries around the world. And so this enables us to do the right thing for the environment and also the right thing for the economy.
Thank you. Thank you. And we have time for one last question. We'll finish off here at the mic on the room, and apologies to those online for our tech difficulties today.
David Winnick from the Western Standard. Premier, just curious, Christina Freelander announced that she's stepping down from cabinet today. I was just curious what your thoughts are on that and if you're going to miss working with her.
I'm surprised that she stepped down, but I know how passionately she feels about Ukraine with her heritage, and I think that she'll do a great job as an envoy as we continue to work through that conflict. I would say that our relationship with the former administration, and she was Deputy Prime Minister as well as Finance Minister, was a little rocky on certain fronts. But that being said, there's no question that she was an advocate at the table to continue getting the financing to complete Trans Mountain. There's no question that she partnered with us on the Dow Petrochemical project, which is a major investment to do net zero petrochemicals and plastics. And she also was a big advocate on the kind of programs that we're talking about here to be able to give credit to companies so that they could invest in carbon reducing technologies. So I think that on some pretty big files, she certainly helped move them along, even though I know that she was facing more resistance in her own cabinet than perhaps this new configuration of cabinet is. I don't know all the reasons why she decided to make the decision that she did, but seeing where she's going to, is rumored to be going, it doesn't surprise me that she would really relish that new opportunity.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone. That concludes today's press conference.